Ah, crap, I've done it again. This time it was eBay that got me. I bid on a car and I didn't expect to win it. And then I get an email telling me that I now own a Mazda from 1986. I just didn't think I was going to win it, but I did. So here it is, my new to me 1986 Mazda 626. So if you've watched this channel for a while, you might know that I often have a problem owning way too many cars. I always manage to get tempted by those forgotten gems from the past. And now I own a mostly forgotten sporty mid-size coupe from 1986, a Mazda 626, also known as the Capella in Japan. I'll do another video that goes into this platform's history in greater detail, but essentially it was Mazda's mid-size entry into the automotive landscape, running from 1970 all the way until 2002 here in the States, when it was replaced by the Mazda 6. And what I have here is a third generation Mazda 626 coupe. By the early 80s, many manufacturers were shifting to front-wheel drive layouts, and Mazda followed suit with this generation's 626. The third gen arrived in the States for the 83 model year, available as a sedan, a coupe, or a hatchback. And mine is a later facelifted model with flush-mounted headlights. So the 626 was positioned as a sporty alternative to the more straightforward mid-size cars from other manufacturers and featured independent rear suspension for better handling. Commercials for this 626 featured James Garner and leather glove wearing drivers throwing the 626 around on winding roads. This car was highly regarded by the automotive press, earning Motor Trend's Import Car of the Year for '83, and it was one of Car and Driver's 10 Best in '84.
Experience Mazda!
Even from here, you know the Mazda 626 Sport Coupe is one high-performance road car. Inside, there's a 6-way adjustable driver's seat, 5-speed overdrive, and a serious cockpit. And while you may be impressed by its outstanding value, you'll be even more impressed by the front-wheel drive 626's outstanding performance. The more you look, the more you like.
For the first 2 years in the States, we got the carbureted 2-liter 4-cylinder that made just 83 horsepower and 110 pound-feet of torque. But for '86, Mazda revised the motor with fuel injection, so mine makes a whopping 93 horsepower and 115 pound-feet of torque. It's not exactly bursting with horsepower, but Road and Track said it was, quote, just enough pep and performance to make driving fun. And Mazda did build on that. In '86, a turbocharged 2-liter was available with 120 horses under the hood. Sales were decent in the States, but this 626 faced stiff competition from the Honda Accord, Toyota Camry, and never came close to the number of units sold as the sales-leading Chevy Celebrity. So yeah, it was never a sales leader, but it was clearly one of the more fun-to-drive options in this segment. All right, let's do a quick walk around of this exterior. Like a lot of cars from this era, the front end is a very clean and boxy affair with only slight rounded edges on the corners here. This one has the later flush-mounted headlights. We have an asymmetrical grille, which I'm a fan of, with the Mazda logo off to the side. And we have an unpainted bumper here, which is often what you'd see on lower trims of cars from this era. But yeah, very clean, boxy shape to this thing. And then onto the side profile, which I absolutely love. I'm a big fan of this very sharp angle right here for the rear window. I like this white trim piece right here as well. Like I said, this was available as a sedan, a hatchback, and a coupe, and I actually think the coupe looks the best out of all of them. And check this out, I'm kind of surprised that we have alloy wheels on this one, because this is not a LX, this is a base model. Also, back in the day, you often saw these big rubberized trim pieces on the door to keep you from getting door dings in parking lots. Don't see that quite as often anymore. And then here in the back, we have a big boxy trunk. Again, unpainted bumpers. Got this black trim piece right here between these taillights. And then you have a 2.0 I badge here on the back, 2 liters, and I stood for fuel injected. And this car actually says Mazda twice on the car, one right here and one right here next to the 626 logo. Kind of wonder why they did that. Now, it's quite likely that there are very few of these things left on the road. They never sold in massive quantities. And like most cars that were purchased as A to B appliances, they usually got kicked to the curb when they got old and required more maintenance. Finding and buying one now is almost like opening a buried time capsule. I honestly haven't seen a Mazda 626 from this generation on the road in years. It's very likely that this is one of the last third-gen 626s left on the road here in the States. And while I'm super glad that it still exists, it's by no means a perfect specimen. The main flaw on the exterior is that the windshield is missing this top trim right here. I'm hoping that I can find it at a junkyard and maybe replace it. This passenger side headlight isn't quite as clean on the inside as the driver's side. I don't know if I can pull it out and clean it, or maybe that just needs to be replaced as well. The paint is actually in really good shape. I think this might have been repainted at some point. There's a couple incredibly minor scrapes and bruises here, but honestly, this thing looks pretty good. All right, let's check out this interior. All right, so I'm sitting in my 86 Mazda 626 and I don't even know where to start. I've only driven this vehicle like 2 miles so far. So you're gonna discover all the features and idiosyncrasies at the same time that I do. So let's start with these seats. These are very, very 80s looking seats. I love the headrest with these holes right through here. Kind of got a grid pattern sewn into the bottom here, which is pretty neat. They're actually pretty comfortable, even 40 years later. There's a lot of sort of carpet-like fabrics going on here. These seats kind of have a carpet-like fabric. The headliner has a carpet-like fabric. The door panels have that same fabric as the seats. The lower part of the doors actually have carpet on them, but all of that's in really good shape. I'm surprised that the dashboard has absolutely 0 cracks in it. Now, the 626's interior was revised for 86, so earlier third gens had a slightly different cabin. Now, some of you might know that some Mazda 626s had oscillating vents right here in the front, where there was a motor that sent the air kind of oscillating throughout the cabin, and I don't have that here, unfortunately. I have the basic vents right here. There's the clock in the center of this dashboard. It says quartz right there, because back in the 80s, you had to know if it was a quartz clock or not. That was a pretty big deal. Got a really nice looking steering wheel with these little nubs here on the side. Good for sporty driving. Let's see what the horn sounds like. Ooh, I like it. It's not kind of as wimpy as some of those Japanese style horns from the 80s. Obviously no airbags in here. That wasn't a requirement on the driver's side until the early 90s. What do we have down here? Well, that's cool. A little storage area right down there. Another little pocket right here. And check this out. This is what they often call a ball chiller. I guess if you're gonna have a male-centric view of this particular event, I guess you could call it a crotch chiller. You don't see that anymore. There's even one here on the passenger side. That's a feature that I think needs to come back. The 1980s was all about keeping your junk cool. Now, I feel like we have a really sporty gauge cluster in my opinion. Orange indicators and orange needles here. It looks pretty nice. And as you'll notice, this car has over 200,000 miles. Yes, it's not a spring chicken, but it still seems to be running really well. Couple idiot lights here. You also have a shift up indicator because they wanted you to maximize your fuel economy back in the day. Very simple and easy to use climate control system with physical controls. And I love that because everything's moving to screens nowadays, which I hate. And down here, looks like somebody replaced the stereo back in maybe the 90s or early 2000s. It's got a CD player. Unfortunately, no cassette player. Little storage area right down here in the center. A very, very small center console. Got an ashtray, and it looks like nobody actually ever used it. I used to store my change in the ashtray back in the day. And obviously right down here, we have a 5-speed manual transmission with a rubber shift boot that kind of looks like the end of a toilet plunger. Another little storage area down here. Actually kind of perfectly sized for my phone. Is there anything in here? Oh, look at this. We do actually have the owner's manual. That's kind of cool. All right, let's check out the very small back seat. All right, so this is not quite as bad as I thought it was gonna be. You could probably fit 2 adults back here without much trouble. Although I always feel a little bit claustrophobic in the back of an old coupe. You're always at the mercy of the person in front of you to get out of the vehicle. And these seats are actually pretty comfortable back here. And because this is sort of a boxy design, I actually have a good amount of headroom too. It does look like these seats do fold down. And obviously you can see there's a little bit of damage on the top of these seats. But yeah, that's kind of nice that they fold down. Yeah, but no real amenities back here other than a seat and a window. And you also get lap belts, no shoulder belts for you. And actually, these windows do open in the back here. Get a little bit of ventilation. That's kind of nice. All right, let's see how much storage space this thing has. Now this is kind of cool. This has a very low liftover, which was kind of a nice feature back in the day. A lot of sedans had the liftover right here, which was kind of annoying. And there's a fair amount of space in this little trunk. It looks like the previous owner provided me with some parts. It looks like they provided me with a rack and pinion. I wonder if that is an indication of what this car might need. Didn't really notice any issues with the steering, nor did I notice any big leaks, but it's kind of nice that they gave me this part. I do have to imagine if this part is in here, it's probably a hint, right? Maybe I should have that rack and pinion checked out. All right, enough yapping about this interior. Let's go for a drive. So let's start off this drive by recounting some of the things that auto reviewers said about the 626 back in the day, and we can see if it holds true for a 40-year-old, slightly worn out example. When Motor Week reviewed this car back in the day, they said that the suspension is very confident and that the steering is light, quick, and feels very secure and attached to the road. And that body roll was minimal. John Davis and crew really liked this thing. Many auto journalists praised the sporty nature of this car thanks to the tuning of the fully independent suspension. By most accounts, this was a pretty good handling car for the era. Now, I'm just rolling around my neighborhood today, so no super fast, curvy canyon roads for me, but I can already tell that the suspension is pretty worn out. But the ride is still pretty decent. It rides over these bumps pretty well. But if you had one of these back in the day brand new, this was probably a lot more fun than a Camry of its day. But fast forward to today with my likely 40-year-old struts, kind of just feels like any other old sedan. So maybe I'll see if I can find some replacement struts to tighten this up a bit. All right, let's downshift to second. Give it some gas. Up to the... I'm not even gonna make it to the red line. But you know, it kind of goes, sort of. When it comes to power and acceleration, we do really need to recalibrate our minds back to 1986, where a car that had 93 horsepower wasn't something that you immediately laughed at. But with 115 pound-feet of torque, it felt reasonably peppy for the era, at least right off the line. But you know, those 93 horsepower only allowed this car to muster up a 10.3 second 0 to 60 time. And you gotta remember, 10 seconds wasn't really considered all that slow back then. But yeah, with the world experiencing 40 years in automotive advancements since the manufacture of this car, it does feel pretty slow. But that's just all part of the nostalgia that you get with this thing, right? Most cars were pretty slow back in the 80s. It takes me back to a time when you had to turn off your AC to accelerate on a freeway on-ramp. I always joke that that was kind of like a turbo button. You could feel your car surge ahead when that AC was no longer sapping 10% of your horsepower. You know, another surprising thing that Motor Week mentioned was about this 5-speed manual transmission. They praised it as being slick shifting, almost BMW-like, hot knife through butter feel. But today, 40 years later, it's kind of a rubbery mess. Look at how much play there is when you're in gear. First gear is kind of somewhere over here. It's not terrible, it still shifts really well, but the shifter does move around a whole lot more than I would expect. So yeah, if I do spend any money improving the mechanicals of this car, I might focus some attention there. I guess I would have really liked to have driven one of these back in the day to see what the shifter was really like, because that was third and I thought I was going into fifth. Fifth is like way over there. It's like in the next time zone. But overall, this thing runs great. I think there is a small exhaust leak that makes this thing a little bit louder than it was when it was new, but the engine still runs beautifully, makes decent power, even with 200,000 miles on the clock. So outside of the Radwood crowd or fans of forgotten basic transportation, this third-gen 626 is not a car that many would consider collectible. I think most people that see me driving this thing around might just assume that I don't have any money and this old boxy Mazda is all that I can afford. Little do they know that I might just have mental issues that cause me to buy forgotten cars from the 80s and 90s. But yeah, it's always fun to drive something like this around. It really is like a time machine. The look of the gauges, the feel of the shifter, the sound of the engine, the ergonomics. New cars are really nothing like this. So there you have it, the latest addition to my fleet, my 86 Mazda 626. Should I have bought this thing? No, absolutely not. I should be selling off cars, not buying them. But this thing totally takes me back to the mid-80s and I kinda love it. Yeah, I should probably stop buying cars sight unseen. This 626 had a couple more issues than I was expecting, but thankfully nothing major. And it does seem like there are still parts for this thing on Rock Auto and eBay, and still a few junkyard parts here and there as well. So now my Hello Road fleet consists of my 88 Chevy Nova twin cam, my 88 Volkswagen Scirocco 16 valve, my 92 Jeep Wrangler, my 97 Toyota Caldina GTT, my 97 Nissan 200 SX SER or Liam Nissan, my 2005 Scion XB, my wife's 2016 Prius, my 2021 Nissan Armada, and now this 86 Mazda 626. Yeah, I kinda still have too many cars. I don't know why I keep buying stuff. So what do you think? Was this a good addition or a terrible mistake? Let me know in the comments below. That's gonna be it for today. If you like this video and you wanna see more like it, please consider subscribing and hitting that bell icon. If you'd like to help support the channel, please buy a t-shirt or hat at helloroad.tv/shop. Thanks so much for watching. I hope you're well, and I'll see you soon.
If you're in the driver's seat, I can tell you real quickly if I'm driving a true road car or something else. This Mazda 626 lives up to the name. Nice, willing overhead cam engine, smooth shifting 5-speed, even adjustable suspension. This car really likes to run. This is one refined road car. It's also fun to drive.